Our next speaker, since he was elected to the Senate in 2010, has focused on defending our constitutional liberties, promoting fiscal responsibility, and preventing government overreach. He's been here, he was here about a year ago. He's come back tonight, and we welcome him. He's a practicing ophthalmologist in Kentucky, and he said that he can go back there anytime and do it, and he may even want to because of what the craziness that's going on in our government. He's shown himself to be a true leader in very, very uncertain times. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome again to the Charleston meeting, Senator Rand Paul. But he still gets the timer.
Thank you, Mallory. It's great to be back. It's good to see my friend Mark Sanford and Justin Amash here. They get it. They understand, everybody here wants to defend the Second Amendment, right? You want to defend the Second Amendment, you got to defend the Fourth Amendment. You want to defend the Second Amendment, you got to defend the First Amendment. In fact, why don't we just defend the whole Bill of Rights? I've got good news, though, for you and bad news. Good news is your government's open. Bad news is your government's open. And still borrowing over $1 million every minute. So we had some tough decisions. You heard the government was shut down. Oh, my goodness, the government was shut down. Well, actually, that's not exactly true. About 15% of your government was shut down. And just to make sure you knew it, we had to go to the monuments, really, which have no doors, and which have nobody out there at all. There is nobody patrolling the World War II monument, but we barricaded the whole thing. Took a lot of overtime, took 50 government workers, but we successfully barricaded it until the World War II vets showed up. And those resourceful World War II vets were able to cut the bindings, carry the barricades, and deliver them to the president at the White House. But during this, we had to classify, all throughout government, we had a mandate. We had to classify essential versus unessential government workers. And they say that we could never balance the budget. We could never cut the spending. So we got this list on essential versus unessential. At HUD, 96% were unessential. This is coming from them, not from us, from them. At EPA, 93% unessential. Department of Education, 90% unessential. But they got to a sticking point. They found one guy, they were going down, they must have been really meticulous. And they found one guy named John Beal over at the EPA. Nobody had seen him for a while. He was still on the payroll, though. And they talked to his boss, and they said, have you seen John? He said, I saw him last year a couple times. And they said, well, why doesn't he come in very often? Is he essential or unessential? Well, he tells me he works for the CIA. Really? And he hasn't been to work in 18 months. I'm not making this up. He had not been there in 18 months. He would call in, I think from his backyard, and say, yes, I'm on secret assignment. I'm in Istanbul. He worked there, I think, for 11 years. He made $80,000 a year. He was given bonuses, performance bonuses. How could we ever balance the budget? Maybe we could start with John Beal, okay? He apparently was making it up. He had no connection to the CIA, but he got performance bonuses. I think maybe we need the opposite. I have a bill, and it has a chance of passing. I won't tell you because it's complicated why it might pass, but it's a bill that gives bonuses to workers for actually finding savings. If you have a salesman or a saleswoman that works for you, they get paid more the more they sell. I think we should pay government employees the more they save. The opposite happens. You know how it all works in government. If you've got $1 million left over at the end of the year, you spend it really fast. That's why Harry Reid loves getting those conventions. $1 million left. We got 2 weeks to spend it. Where can you spend $1 million in a weekend? Las Vegas. My wife gets so mad at travel for the government. Not only do they have you, they want to give you something you don't want and can't afford, Obamacare, but then it's free and you still won't take it. So they have to advertise it, and then they have to pay someone who travels around to promote it. We've got that for every government program. She meets people all the time that are on airplanes traveling somewhere from Washington out to flyover country where I live, but their job is to advertise a free government program they can't get enough people to sign up for. You know something, it's free, that you can't give away, there has to be a problem. So we've got Obamacare, and you've heard a few people have been canceled. Nancy Pelosi said we could learn about this bill when we got it, we could read it. I'm still learning about it. It's 20,000 pages of regulations. The bill was 2,000 pages, and I didn't realize this until this week. The whole idea of you losing or getting your insurance canceled wasn't in the original Obamacare. It was a regulation written by President Obama 3 months later. So we had a vote. This was before I got up there. The Republicans had a vote to try to cancel that regulation so you couldn't be canceled, to grandfather everybody in. You know what the vote was? Straight party line. Every Democrat voted to keep the rule that cancels your insurance. So this week, have you noticed? Democrats are like going to the White House and saying, Mr. President, what did you do? We're not responsible for this. The president canceled your insurance, but not us, because we're running in the South now, and we got a Republican running against us. So Mary Landrieu, she didn't have anything to do with it. Neither did Mark Pryor. Well, guess what they did? They voted specifically, not just for Obamacare, they voted for the rule that says if your insurance ever changes, you'll be canceled. So think about this. If it ever changes, this isn't a question of some people being canceled. Everyone will eventually be canceled because insurance companies, the policies become more expensive over time. That change causes it to be ineligible for the grandfather rule, and you will be canceled. This is going to happen to the employer policies also. Why? Because you're too stupid to take care of yourselves. The president thinks that you're not smart enough to make any decisions. And really, this is not about health care. It's about freedom of choice. It's about freedom. It's about whether you should have the liberty to buy something. What comes after health care? Somebody might someday say, we're going to ban the big gulp. How would that be? Oh, that's right, they already did that, sorry. But what's next? We got health care, we got the big gulp. I mean, you name it, they're coming after your donuts. Did you hear they're coming after the trans fat in your donuts? So I mentioned this today, and unfortunately my wife tells me I should count to 10 before I speak sometimes, but I couldn't help. The FDA has banned, unilaterally, some unelected bureaucrat has banned trans fats. And so I said we need to line every one of them up. I want to see how skinny or how fat the FDA agents are that are making the rules on this. And not only that, any of them with a BMI over 16 or whatever the number you're supposed to have, I want to see them on the treadmill, and I want somebody from maybe OSHA lashing them while they're working on the treadmill. Because if we're going to have a nanny state and everybody's got to eat the right thing and you can't eat a donut, maybe we ought to just enforce it on the government workers first. One of the questions to Justin was, how do we get a bigger party? What do we do to win? How do we win again? I think you've got it down in South Carolina, and since you're doing so well, you need to help us in other parts of the country is what you need to do. But we do need a bigger party. We need a party that looks like America. With tattoos, without tattoos, with ponytails. Where's Rocky D? Rocky D, you got a ponytail? Turn around, look. I don't know if he's a Republican or not, but he's here tonight and he's got a ponytail, okay? With earrings, without earrings, young and old. If we can agree that we want a smaller government, that we want power limited, it means you can have people of all kinds of different stripes. White, black, brown, we need everybody. But some say we can't win unless we dilute the message. We have to be not really for tax reduction, but let's be for revenue neutral tax reform. I tell people all the time, these Republicans are like, we got to have revenue neutral tax reform. I said, I would still be sitting at home or practicing medicine or throwing stuff at my TV. I wouldn't have done all of this to come to Washington to be for revenue neutral tax reform. No one is ever going to knock on a door for you because you say, hey, I'm for revenue neutral tax reform. Who cares? Let's be boldly for what we're for. Smaller government, less taxes, less regulation. have to give up on any of that. We don't have to give up on being for a balanced budget. We don't have to give up on being the party that promotes business, that promotes low taxes for everybody, whether you're rich, middle class, or poor, because that's where the jobs come from. We don't have to dilute any of that. We have to be better at presenting it. But there are some things, though, we can do that would extend our message. But it's not like we're going to make up a new message or we're going to be the Democrats' light. But let's extend the message of the Bill of Rights to everybody. It's something that if you know how to connect with people, should draw people to our party. Think about it. Think about what young people don't have any money. They don't own a business. They don't care about taxes. It's not that they disagree with us. Young people are not going away from us because they disagree with our message, but they're interested in other things. They've all got a cell phone. They all are on Facebook. Actually, Facebook's not even cool enough. Justin, you're going to have to get on Instagram. We're on Instagram. Well, maybe not me personally. Someone's helping me be on Instagram. But the thing is, young people care about their cell phone, they care about being on the internet, and they care about their privacy. It's the Fourth Amendment. You shouldn't say that once you give your records to somebody, you have no expectation of privacy. Think about it. I have to think about it in old-fashioned terms. My Visa bill. I know what the Visa bill is. I get it. But it's none of your damn business what's on my Visa bill. It could tell you whether I smoke, whether I drink. Could tell you whether I take medications. Tell you what I read, what books I read, what magazines I read. Could tell you whether I see a psychiatrist. Not yet, but I probably will soon. But it's not your business. If you accuse me of a crime, call a judge. A warrant's not that hard to get. Get a warrant. It's what we fought the revolution over. Get a warrant. But if we would be passionate about believing in the Fourth Amendment, the protection of your records, the protection of your privacy, young people will come to us. His numbers have dropped 20 points in the last month. Young people will come to us on the issue of privacy. You get a Hillary Clinton who doesn't care about your privacy, who doesn't care about the Fourth Amendment, we could be the opposite. We could be the party who does. But it's not changing our message, just believing in the Bill of Rights. And if we say, well, gosh, we don't win any ethnic group, you'd be right. We don't win the African Americans. We don't win the Jewish Americans. We don't win the Asian Americans. We don't win Latino vote. You name it, we don't win. And how do we get to that vote? I think it's still the Bill of Rights. It's about justice. I'll give you an example, the war on drugs. The war on drugs has disproportionately affected African Americans. And you say, oh, well, they're just smoking more pot or doing more drugs. It's probably not true. All surveys show that blacks and whites use drugs at about the same rate. But 4 out of 5 people in prison are black. And people in this, all throughout have written this off and just said, oh, blacks are committing more crimes, blacks are doing more drugs. It's not true. Blacks make up 10% of the population, and they're 80% of the prison population. And studies show that they're doing drugs at the same time. Why? Why are they in prison and your kids aren't? Because your kids aren't standing on the street, but your kids are still probably smoking pot in the car somewhere. Not everybody, but I mean, does anybody know here, does anybody know someone here who got in trouble when they were a kid? You got a lawyer for your kid. The person who lives in a poor section of town doesn't get a lawyer. And we go there, or the police go there, because it's easier to convict them. Why don't we be the party for justice? Why don't we be the party that says you shouldn't put a kid in jail for 10 years for possession of marijuana? I'm not talking about legalizing it, but I'm just saying let the judge have discretion. In Kentucky, we have drug court. We try to treat them reasonably. We don't say it's okay, but we don't put them in jail for 10 years. Weldon Angelos is in jail for 53 years. He's 22 years old. He got a 53-year sentence. No chance of parole for selling marijuana. You say, oh, well, selling it's bad. They all sell it because they can't afford to buy it to use it unless they sell it. It's not good. None of it's good. But we got to be the party that, or some of us should be, at least a party that says we're for justice for these people. What happens if you go to jail for 3 or 4 years for drugs? Unfortunately, half of our society, white and black, has kids, and they're not married. You come out with child support. In my state, it's a felony not to pay your child support. You go back to jail if you don't pay your child support. You get out, you're a convicted felon, you're trying to get a job. So I think these are things we could talk about. To me, it's not changing the message. It's still being for the message. Most of us are Christians or Jewish or of some religious faith. We believe in forgiveness. I mean, not that there shouldn't be punishment, but there should be some rehabilitation. They asked Jerry Falwell 20 years ago about this. They said, if a young person in your congregation were caught with marijuana, would you rather incarceration or counseling? He said counseling 20 years ago. So this isn't, I don't think, that out there a position. But I think if we were for things like this, maybe people would pay attention. If we would show up in the African American community, the Latino community has the same kind of thing, disproportionate arrest record. if we were to do this, I think people would pay attention. Think about Richard Jewell. You remember Richard Jewell? Everybody said he was guilty, that Olympic bombing. He looked like a bomber. He was an introvert. Well, I guess I would want some kind of protection if you're an introvert and you look like the bomber. But anyway, he wasn't the bomber. But think about why it's important that you have a trial. You know, think about if he'd have been a black man in 1920, what would have happened to him? Think about, we have a law in the books now that says, and Justin's worked on this a lot, indefinite detention. It says that an American citizen could be sent to Guantanamo Bay without a trial, without a jury, without a judge, without a lawyer, forever. And I had this debate with another Republican on the Senate floor, and I said, really, you would send an American citizen to Guantanamo Bay forever? He said, yeah, if they're dangerous. And I said, sort of begs the question, who gets to decide? We really have to think these things through. The reason you want due process, the reason you want a jury trial is people can be falsely accused. You can have the wrong person. But think about that message, if we were to bring that message to people who think and have evidence, historical evidence that they've been treated unfairly. Think of the Japanese Americans in World War II. Think of African Americans in parts of the South. Think if we brought that message, which isn't changing or diluting our message, bring that message to people who haven't heard it. I think we can do better. And I think finally, if we were to bring our message with optimism, there's a painter by the name of Robert Henry, and his instructions to younger painters were paint like a man coming over the hill singing. I like the image of that. I think when we become the party that proclaims our message like a man coming over the hill singing, then I think we'll win again. Thank you very much.
Okay, questions. Let's take the question down there first.
Senator Paul, I want to thank you for everything that you're doing. I'm 20 years old, and when I walk to college and I say I'm a Republican, everybody laughs at me. But how do you think we can stop Obamacare now with the, we have a Democrat-controlled Senate, we have a Democrat president. It's failing. Some people believe that we should just let it fail. How do we stop it before it causes too much damage to our nation?
If he doesn't do something about the cancellations, they will overwhelmingly lose the election in 2014. I think he's going to change it, and I don't think he's going to bring it to us. My prediction is within 3 or 4 weeks, he's going to change this regulation and just get rid of it so the cancellations stop. Because when this gets to the employer market, which is 4 times bigger than the market we're in now, we're talking about 12 million people being canceled. Think about the people who have cancer and chronic illness and their doctors trying to get it and getting on the website to get it. It's a disaster. If reforms come forward, though, I think Republicans will vote for the reforms, myself included, to try to fix the cancellation problem. How can I be against fixing it? However, I'm not too unhappy about watching them stew a little bit over an awful program.
Next question.
Hello, Senator. It's good to see you again. Senator, the question that I have relates to your assessment. Do you think that quantitative easing will ever be voluntarily stopped? And how long are you going to stand up for Janet
Yellen.
Yellen doesn't get the chairmanship of the Fed?
Well, there are physical limits and urologic limits to how long you can stand and speak. And you can only really slow things down for about a day or two. And I haven't decided whether how I'll oppose it. I will oppose it and require that she have 60 votes. I think it's important that someone talk about the Fed. We don't talk enough about it. Interest rates are the one thing that goes throughout the entire economy. They're supposed to send a signal to everyone about how the economy's faring. If you keep them below the market rate, you keep encouraging people that everything's okay. Keep buying stuff. Or in 2007, keep building houses because the interest rates are so low. So I think it is a problem. We will oppose Janet Yellen. I told him I'll make it easy on them if they give me a vote on Audit the Fed.
We're going to take a few more questions, but before we take a few more questions, I want to thank the Citadel cadets who helped get everybody seated and help put some control into this organization. And I also want to remind you again that December 2nd is the next meeting with Congressman Stutzman from Indiana. And the next question.
Senator, welcome back to South Carolina. My spies tell me, and I'm not sure if this is true, that you're preparing a major foreign policy address. Can you tell us what the RAND doctrine on the foreign policy front might look like if you're president?
I've been accused, on occasion of borrowing things. And I will. I'm going to borrow from the Reagan doctrine tomorrow. I'm going to borrow from the Weinberger doctrine, and there will be a speech tomorrow. I'm not sure it's going to be a major foreign policy address because some of it will be some of the things I've said before, but I'll be at the Citadel tomorrow, and I think they're streaming it live. But I've become convinced that people a lot of times in the political world, they start out with something that's a conclusion. They start out and they say, well, to be involved in Syria is in our national interest. Well, that's a conclusion. The debate should be over whether or not being in Syria is in our national interest. And I'm frankly unconvinced. There are 2 million Christians in Syria who are generally protected by Assad, who's an awful man, who's being fought by Islamic rebels who decapitate priests and eat the hearts of their enemy. I'm not sure which side I could be on, but I certainly can't and don't think we should be sending arms to Islamic rebels who are going to be killing Christians. And one quick example of it, about 2 months ago in the ancient village of Malula, they speak Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke. The Islamic rebels came. Now, our side will say these aren't the ones we're funding, but I don't know how you know which ones you're funding and which ones you're not. They showed up in this village and they said, convert to Islam or die. A young man by the name of Sarkis El-Zakhem stood up and he said, I'm a Christian, and if you must kill me, do it. And those were his last words. I can't send arms to people who are going into Christian villages and killing Christians.
Next question. Over there. Gentleman over there.
Thanks, Senator. Immigration reform seems like a real trap for the Republicans. So how do we craft a bill that will be seen favorably by the Hispanics, but yet doesn't allow the Democrats to get a majority for the next 20 years?
In general, I'm for immigration reform. I did vote against the bill, though, because one of my main complaints about the bill, I have two main complaints. One, if you want to fix illegal immigration, you have to expand legal immigration. In the bill, which is supposed to be this really broad-minded, liberated bill of immigration reform, they for the first time limit agricultural workers, the people who come to our country to pick crops. They limit it to 100,000. Well, the Chamber of Commerce says 400,000 people come every year. So if I were to vote for that bill, I'm voting for 300,000 illegal immigrants to come in every year. The other thing the bill does is 40% of the 11 million who are here came here legally. They tried to follow our paperwork, and this is why I have become more sympathetic to them. The reason they're illegal is because of our government, and because our government has a crummy visa system. They came in legally, but then they working for $9 an hour picking crops, but then they saw a construction job for $14 an hour. What would you do, or what would you tell your son to do? Go take the $14 an hour job, and they do. It's illegal. Under the Senate bill that I voted no on, it's still illegal. So they didn't fix the work visa program. They didn't make it legal to go from one category to the next. And then my final complaint is I don't trust the president, this one or maybe the next one, but I don't trust the president to make the decision on the border being secure. I think Congress should make the decision. So I had an amendment that said that we would vote each year. We would give more work visas. That's the main thing I would do. And then at the end of the year, you would vote on whether the border's secure. We would vote in Congress. If it's secure, you'd give some more work visas. And we'd expand over 5 or 6 years, and we would give work visas to the 11 million. Not everybody will agree with that, but that's my position. I think that is coming towards the other side to try to find a middle ground. I am worried about it going to a conference committee because on our side, all the Republicans, or a lot of the Republicans that would be on the conference committee, are the people who supported with the Democrats the Senate bill. I think the only way we could pass something is for the Speaker of the House to make a deal outside of the conference committee that we're going to do something on border security and maybe something on work visas, and then we're just going to limit it to that, and we'll see how it goes for a few years. If it's going directly to voting, I don't think the House is going to vote for that.
Time for a couple more questions. Let's take that question over there. Gentleman right over there.
Senator Paul, there are U.S. senators I used to think of as reformist, like campaign financing. And some of them seem in the establishment now criticizing you and a couple other senators. Could you comment about this division in Republican senators, and why are they criticizing you instead of, okay, you got your opinion, they got theirs, why can't they just go about their business instead of making a public issue of it?
I don't understand it. I think I'm so likable. How could they say mean things about me? I think the division maybe. My theory about the way news is reported is that when you turn on your evening news, every night there'll be a murder or a shooting. It's really not that common, but we focus on bad news. So we focus on contention in Washington, and we don't focus on some of the good things. Justin talked about working with the other side. I've worked with the other side on several things too. Not on things where I feel like I'm giving up my principles, but on things I strongly, passionately believe, but some people on the left believe that way too. But I think our differences really may not be as great as some make it out to be. And I will say that the one thing, and this is in defense of all Republicans basically, most on the House or the Senate side, I think it's unfair to characterize any Republican in the Senate or in the House as being for Obamacare. So if you're seeing ads saying somebody's for Obamacare, not one Republican voted for funding in the Senate or the House for funding of Obamacare. We did have some disagreement on tactics, but we've lost a couple of elections, so there's growing pains. I was there in 1976 when my dad was a delegate for Reagan, and I can tell you the Reagan-Ford people were at each other's throats, same way in 80 until Reagan wins, and then it becomes more the party of Reagan after that because people came to Reagan. But we've had contention before, and we'll get through this, and sometimes it's good to have a debate. If we don't have a debate, then it just sort of, we don't really figure out the better way to get forward.
We're going to have time for just a question or two more. December 2nd is our next meeting. Again, I want to thank you all for coming. This has been a very exciting evening, and I want to particularly thank our Congressman Sanford, for giving up his time to speak. I hope you'll come back and you will speak very soon in one of the upcoming meetings, and I know you will. Thank you. Thank you, Congressman. Okay, next question. Okay, I'm gonna let my 10-year-old son ask the last question of the evening. Ma'am?
What do you think is the worst scandal of the Obama presidency?
Boy. The worst scandal of the Obama presidency. I could probably go on for 30 minutes till I got to the punchline on that. I think very briefly, the IRS scandal is where they targeted people who they disagreed with. They disagreed with us for religious reasons or for political reasons. I think that's awful. However, I probably would say the NSA scandal is a bigger deal. And the reason I say that is that your privacy is embodied, the protection of it, in the Fourth Amendment. And we've been going the wrong way in some of our court decisions for quite a while. Same way we did after the Depression with the Interstate Commerce Clause, we went the wrong way. With the Fourth Amendment, we got to where we said, once you give information to somebody else, you have no expectation of privacy. I mean, they can look at all your stuff. It'd be like having your baseball cards, and then everybody gets to come over and look through them and then take what they want. It'd be awful, wouldn't it? So I think that probably, to me, the issue of privacy is one of the biggest issues. Although, now I'm torn. I'm thinking of Benghazi, and I'm still pretty damn mad about Benghazi, too.
How can people keep in touch with you? What website?
I don't update my Facebook every minute like some people, but every time my staff, someone says, oh, so-and-so, the hater on MSNBC said something nasty about you, my staff says, look, you got more people on your Facebook than they've got watching their channel. So we'd love to have you on our Facebook. We have an official one and an unofficial one, but we'd love to have you on Facebook or get on our Twitter. We're getting ready to we do Instagram. We do things I don't even know what venue we're in anymore. Thanks.
We want to thank our 18 organizations that are carrying this live, and we want to thank you all for coming. God bless. We'll see you December 2nd.